Multi-access delivery. Okay. So, to be honest, all of this might have looked good. Gets weaker as we move forward because I just ran out of time, or I don't understand everything all the time. That is another issue. Multi-access delivery. So, I don't know if anybody's on the call who wants to speak to this. I can speak to that, but I cannot explain every detail. Multi-access delivery was initially related with a multi-service location. And then we identified that we're talking about two different things. So one is where you expose to the client multiple service locations, and the client, the Dash client, when I'm talking about our media client, is basically doing active aspects, and we actively also treat this on the 5G media streaming level. There are other cases where you have multi-access that is handled on a lower level. And the lower levels, what we identified multi-access technologies is, for example, MTTCP, MP-Quick. So this one is kind of added here, right? But in that case, that's exposed. So that was covered before. And there's a third one, which is referred to ATSSS, which allows multi-access support splitting on the UE core multi-access PDU connectivity. So all of this has been studied in SA2, and we looked into this, and we identified that on stage 2 at least, there is no impact to 5G media streaming, right? So it's because it's transparent to the architecture, it's all going to be happening on M4, and whether you use MPTCP or MP-Quick or ATSS on M4, it doesn't make a difference. So that's stage 2. There's an informative annex that documents this. On stage 3, we had a bit of discussion, and there were updates done now, and I want to summarize this. The updates are, I would say, carefully done in a way that you bring some knowledge and attention of multipath functionalities to the client and potentially to the application. So the one idea is that we have procedures now that the application or the media session handler may configure the content delivery for download streaming between and the media using the API at the reference points to basically using a desired content delivery configuration. And what you could specify there is which content delivery protocols to be used. So for example, you could say use Quick, use TCP, use and you could also do a preference for using multipath there as well. I haven't fully figured out what would be the use case for the configuration. There could be aspects that, for example, power savings could be addressed with this, or other aspects that would be done by the application would configure this, but that was basically identified. And the equivalent work was done for uplink streaming in 5.6 and 5.9. We have the ability to do this configuration through the service URL. And then there is a new configuration settings API for the client that adds the capabilities. You can read what you support. So do you support TCP and so on? And then you can also put up a desired content delivery configuration that basically implements the above. And we also have adding error and status codes that would basically support multipath. If you did a configuration or whatsoever, then you can notify what you're doing, which are you using, how many paths, and so on and so on. I think that covers it. And again, I feel like I try to communicate it as accurate as possible, but I'm also very happy if others jump in and augment on the details, such as Richard.
I think that's a very good summary, actually, Thomas. I mean, in the end, we went for something very simple, really, and I think that's probably right. Underneath there may be multiple access networks, but from the perspective of the application, it just you know it expresses a preference to use multipath if it's available, and then the underlying system works out how to map that desire onto the available access networks. So it's quite simple, really.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a bit unsure that these APIs that are done here are easily to be supported because, at least from a Dash.js perspective, and we talked about this. This was a discussion in SVTA as well. How much is the client able to do such things, and how much is it actually able to configure it, right? And then you need to also understand that, at least in the downlink streaming, the decision to do this is made by the server, right? It's not going to be something that the client makes the decision. And there's an underlying capability, obviously, exchange happening. So you would get to, yeah, you need to get involved into some lower layer negotiation that is not that trivial, right? So you would have to basically, when you ask what multipass capabilities you're having, you would have to instruct that don't use multipass and so on and so on. So I, I don't want to go into this specifics, but I believe somebody would have to scratch a bit head how to implement this in an exo player, for example.